Still a minute, but.
Muy bien. Ya se van conectando.
Yeah, people is entering.
Alexander, if you click to participant, you can see all the attendees. Okay, and you can see that they are coming to the session.
Hello, everyone. We are waiting for people that are registered to just entering. We will wait for a couple of seconds, so for you have time to enter the session. Okay, people are still entering, so we will wait just a couple of seconds more. Okay. There's still more people coming, so we will start in a second.
We are a lot of people, 82 attendees at the moment, so.
Great.
And still going on.
Okay, we are almost there and we're ready to start. So I'm sure some more people will come. The numbers are still increasing, but we start. So welcome everyone to the second webinar of this second day. So some of the participants I know because I see the names in the other session. So I know that you have been here since yesterday, but for the ones that are joining us in this session, so this is the final multiplier event. This is a group of sessions that are part of a larger event, which is the final event of our European project. It's a project focusing on researcher identity development, and particularly we are interested in early career researcher development. So as many of you, as I said, know, yesterday we had a set of very interesting and productive sessions. We had 7 sessions in total that helped us to reflect upon crucial issues to advance and improve early career researchers. So it was really amazing to see more than 100 people in almost all the sessions discussing and very living sessions. That's one of the paradox of these pandemic times that give us the opportunity to share so easily different ways and different sessions, so people from different countries. So let me offer some data. We are here today. Now we are almost 100 people already. We expect more people because there are more people registered in the session. And what's even more amazing is that we are coming for 32 countries. So we are people registered from all over the world. So Africa, Morocco, Nigeria, United States, South America, Mexico, Colombia, Argentina, Ecuador, people from Asia, India, Japan, Egypt, and all over the European countries. So that's really a good opportunity for us to share. More than half of attendants are pre-docs, but the rest are divided between doctoral program developers or program coordinators and postdoc. So as many of you know, we are a group of researchers. I am Montserrat Castelló, the PI of the project, from different countries, 5 countries, working together for almost 10 years now. If you visit our website, you will find the outputs of the projects and publications, which are all of them available on an open regime basis. And we invite you especially to visit our, Mariana will just copy the address, to visit our final output, which is an interactive site. It's called Researchers Like Me, and it aims to be a social site for early career researchers to share, to discuss, to share resources, to find, you know, a sense of community among peers. So it's still a beta version, but please, we will be so grateful if you send us your comments, your impressions, your feedback. Now it's time to improve the tool, and we really are, we will be very happy if you tell us how it's working. Okay, we start another promising session. The topic is it's a very interesting one. So it's a live topic, publish or perish, this culture which is impacting more and more early career researchers too, especially pre-docs at the time. So it's a pleasure for me to have to introduce Alexander Hasgal. As many of you know, he is the head of the European University Association Council for Doctoral Education, and is responsible for the largest European network in this field. So it's a community of academic leaders and professionals from 265 universities in 36 countries. So it's the vision that they have. It's a very broad one. It's interesting also having him here because he has been in different positions before this one. So it's representative of what we have been discussing these days. So having doctoral positions, PhD holders having positions outside academia, but in moving between sectors, which is something that still it's complicated for many early career researchers. So some information about the dynamics of the session. As some of the participants already know, Alexander will present the topic for the next 20 minutes or 25 minutes. And you can raise your questions through the questions and answer tool, this panel you have available here. So we'll collect the questions and Alexander will answer them in the last 15 minutes. If we cannot answer all of them offline, so Alexander kindly offered to answer them offline. So we'll distribute a document among the participants with all the answers, if the case. So we'll finish punctually at 45 because we have another session as you know. So Inge will talk about the situation of precarious works in Netherlands. You please use the chat for comments, sharing ideas, to interact among participants, and not for addressing questions, okay? So I think that's all. Alexander, thank you very much for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Montserrat. I'm really happy being here. Unfortunately, as we always have to say this year, we are not able to meet in person, but it's already great to be here, at least virtually, and meet also a lot of participants virtually. And congratulations also that so many people also work on this issue. And I saw also a lot of early career researchers. And as you said, I'm really happy to answer if there are any questions, but I'm also very happy to have your ideas and suggestions and reflections if you have anything to think. And at the end, there will be also the email address, so you can always contact me and with your ideas. But I start now to share some slides, and it's this here, a second. So I hope you see now. Okay, so thank you very much. And now I hope, I don't know why the slides, yes. Okay, so thank you very much for inviting you again. I'm here in this event, so immediately starting to introduce, and you already did some introduction, Montserrat. So I'm representing here the EUA Council for Doctoral Education. We are a membership service of the European University Association, which is actually the largest European doctoral education network, and we address especially doctoral education, but of course, also early career research more generally, also postdoctoral researchers, and driving here doctoral education policies and promoting cooperation, exchange of good practicing. We look at trends, we organize regular events, where we always look on one hand on some issues which are always very current to deal with, like supervision, like organization of doctoral education, but also looking what are the emerging issues, like, for instance, research assessment, which always has been a topic, of course, in academia, but in the last years, I will talk about that, is becoming even more important and discussed. And we, just to say some topics we look at, deal with is issues like research integrity, open science. We look always about collaboration, and that's also great that we have people also outside from Europe. We have worked on several global project as well with international partners, career development, but also issues like, for instance, the health, mental health, well-being of doctoral candidates, or issues like the SDGs and how doctoral education can contribute to the big challenges our world is facing today. Now, starting about doctoral education, obviously, and we all know that the doctorate is like the oldest degree we have in this world, in Europe. It comes from the late medieval time with our own history, which unfortunately I cannot talk in this webinar, but in the last 15 and 20 years, there have been important changes here in Europe, more leading to more structural approaches of doctoral education, leading to the establishment of doctoral schools in many places where there have not been doctoral schools. To give you some numbers, like 15 years ago, we had about 25% of European university had structured forms of or structural institutionalized forms established. Now we are more about 90–95%. So most universities have developed certain umbrellas and structures and doctoral schools in their universities, and this is based on especially several meetings that have happened and work that has been done also in the context of EUACD, together of course with other partners and in the universities, starting with the seminar 2005 in Salzburg, where some principles were developed, which unfortunately I can also not present here, and then further on have further developed. However, I would like, and not only because I'm a historian, I like to look into this past and to say that these Salzburg principles that have been developed about 15 years ago were based on 2 points which still remained quite important, and I will show you that, which is doctoral training is based on the advancement of knowledge through original research, and at the same time that doctoral education is also need to address a broader array needs of the employment market that is wider than academia, but probably this may be a change. We are more and more also discussing that even within the academia, the different careers can be much broader, as we have thought in the beginning, but in the center of doctoral education about whatever, even looking at this variety we can find here, the researcher mindset, the flexibility of thought, the creativity, intellectual autonomy through original concrete research is in the center. This is the mindset we are looking at it. And it's like, and I like to share this as well, looking at this project is exactly looking also into this researcher's identity. Now, We did a survey 2018 and published it 2019. I'm happy to share later the links where we are looking, how is it today? Is it still how academia is working? And here we see, yes, we asked our member, how do doctoral candidates spend their time? Mostly, and we see scientific academic research is in the center of their daily work to a great extent. They see doctoral candidates as academic scholar, but at the same time, also as highly skilled knowledge workers. And when we go back, you see it's not only the scientific research and in the center, they do a lot of other things, including teaching, teaching-related administration and so on, which is not in the center of their activities, but it's still quite an important part of the doctoral work of the life of a doctoral candidate. Now, let's go faster. So when we look what are they doing most their time, again, they concentrate on specific research competencies, but at the same time, they're working on other issues, like, for instance, what we would call more transversal skills, for instance, management, leadership competencies, but also issues like knowledge valorization, teaching is an important part of what a doctoral candidate is doing nowadays. It's, again, the center is the research, but a lot more is also part what early career researchers and later on even also senior researchers are doing. Now, what we did in the context of EUA and in the context of current development in the area of open science and open access, we were looking at how are early career researchers then assessed. And for that, we asked UA members. We got about 260 universities from 32 European countries answering. And the first question was to say, who has actually a say about research assessment? And here we can see that universities are quite autonomous in developing how you do actually assess careers in research, and you look at the performance, for instance, of research units. Now, in the further questions, when we look more in detail, we see that a lot of other actors come here also into game. So this high autonomy we have is always also in the context, for instance, of, let's say, funders, governmental agencies who have a say there, but the self-perception is quite autonomous. Now, when we look about what is really important from all what researchers are doing, we see research publication is in the center. And second is attracting of funding. While other points like, for instance, the capacities on research network, mentoring activities, other issues which researchers do is much less. However, it's already considered, so it's not that it's completely irrelevant, but the importance lies quite strongly on research publication. Now, when we asked, how do you assess this research publication, we then see that the journal impact factor, and I don't know if everybody's aware of the journal impact factor, it's actually a measure about how many citation a certain journal receives within a certain year. The journal impact factor is very high. The H index, which is actually based on how many journals an author publishes with at least a certain amount of publications, of citation, is also quite in the center. So the metrics, especially journal impact factor metric, which doesn't really look at the research itself, but only where do you publish it, is quite the most important publication you have. And the number of citation you get, it's quite prominent in the way how research is assessed. Now, this, and I will talk about this later, leads to some issues and some challenges we have to deal with. Now, we, however, asked also the members of the university, what do you think is the main reason that you don't change the system? Here, it's the first point is to say it's extremely complex. How do you find, and this is what I will talk later, how do you find an approach which takes into account the whole complexity of the research process? Second is the lack of institutional capacity. So changing the system, especially when we had a system which was very much based on numbers, and now we want a more broad approach to research, then we also need more capacities. And the third one, and this is maybe also really great that we discuss this in this context, is also the resistance of researchers who may think, well, you change this, but I build my career on that. Will it harm me or not, or will it get worse? So the discussions and the need to discuss about what assessment is and the inclusion of all relevant stakeholders, and particularly, of course, of researchers, is quite important. Now, again, here, another information we had, indeed, the metrics, the measurements of research output based on number of publication and citation are in the center. And only on second time is the qualitative peer review assessment. But now, let's go to the question or the discussion we are here for about this publish or perish. And we must say more and more when you look into certain discussion on career structures in academia, are we now in the publish and perish? Because you publish, but you won't get where you get at. This is becoming an issue to be discussed. So now, the first point, which is a critique on this approach on focusing on publishing more and more, is the question is that the quantity, not the quality, is becoming prioritized. In the center is how much you publish and not what. Secondly, that just a part of the academic production is taken into account. So if you produce, maybe let's take in the humanities, publishing in certain journal, and usually it must be journals which are in a certain database from where the journal impact factor is measured. This is important, but let's say if as a historian you publish maybe in a big newspaper and interact with the public, this is not seen as a form of academic production. And these are issues which limits significantly what research should do, and also limits them to do other things, other parts of academic work, which is not the publication themselves. Secondly, there is this dependence on a few outlets. So just certain journals everybody has to publish in the same journal, which in an open science system where we want a broader system of publication, we wanted people not only publish their positive results, but also the diversity of what they have found out, and also have different forms of interaction. It becomes difficult. Innovative and non-mainstream approach could be discriminated against because they may not be published in the right point. And also what we see, this feeling you need to publish, leads also to mental health issues towards researchers. Now, this is quite clear now, and this is a lot of discussed. What we can see now, that more and more stakeholders, including, of course, the European University Association, but also funders, scholars, universities themselves, rectors' conferences, are starting to think, how do we change? So we are now in an actually quite fascinating moment where everybody can have a say and participate in the question how research assessment system can be reformed and made better in the interest of researchers. Now, I have now two slides where, and then I'm also like to enter into the discussion. What do we actually need for a better assessment? And these are more also reflections I would like to share with you that we can discuss what you think in these regards, if you agree or not. So it's really a start for the discussion. First of all, it's important to overcome to have transparency and fairness in the assessment system. It's important for early career researchers to understand assessment and rely on it. Secondly, the sustainability. It's not only to say we now have this system here and this system here. It's a way that supports the careers of early career researchers, brings also understands the mobility, which, as I said before, makes it very important that we have a concerted approach between different universities together of finding the right way. The third, and I talked a little bit about this, is the diversity of what academics do. It's writing articles, it's writing books, that's key in research, but also teaching, societal engagement, communication, the collection and processing of data according to FAIR principles. So the ability to share your data, the ability to be a good supervisor or mentor, these are all aspects which need to be taken into account in such a system. Another point is, of course, the usability. You need to have the right indicator for what you are doing and the right procedure. So a one-fits-it-all approach for all disciplines, for all career steps may not really get what you want. And having an overcomplicated system may also not support what you want, because we know it that you always, or that sometimes you may run the risk that people say this is too complicated, I just go for the old way, which we don't want. Again, about this diversity, it's about not only about the diversity what you do, it's also about a certain diversity in the way how you develop your own career way. So it's not about that you need to do everything. I will talk about this later in a second, but it's about that you can also develop your own career path within academia, but also without academia, and also this ability to change your careers is here important. Then this acceptation of unpredictability. Assessment system cannot tell 100%, of course, what you will be, but also research also can never you will never always get the result where you hope for. And especially when we look into research ethics and integrity, it's not only that you show and you have to focus, this is my spectacular stuff, but everything you do in research, developing idea, testing idea, accepting different kind of results is quite important here. And then again, this multi-stakeholder approach, it's important that early career researchers are part of this, are discussing in it, and together with universities, funders, senior academics, and others. This means, yeah, maybe before I come this just came out yesterday. So together with DORA, which was this DORA declaration, was one of the first declaration critically addressing the use of some indicator. It comes from biomedical science. They publish on their website in collaboration also with EUA and Spark Europe several case studies on how institutions today are already changing career assessment. And you see here, there is the website of DORA, or I also added a QR code. You can go there. And so if you're interested in very specific cases, and due to time, I didn't think I should now start to look into certain institutions, but you can find there more information. Now, 2 points maybe. First of all, when we speak about publication, it's important, and here, of course, I also speak myself, coming from the humanities, but it's important that you read the stuff, and not only in humanities, in all the disciplines. We should not get into a system where the counting is in the center and how much you did and how many publications. But if there is an advice for early career researchers, I would do is focus on your research, focus on what you are doing, and read what others do and get into this interaction. Don't get into a trap of self-optimization. Don't be afraid that now you need to do everything all the time. It's important to discuss, and this is also the important role of supervisors and of doctoral schools, to discuss also what the different opportunities are, the different ways to do to develop careers, to also develop skills in career development. But yes, so this is another point. Now, to end, I would like to invite you all to our next online thematic workshop. We were actually supposed to be in Portugal in January, which unfortunately is not possible. There we'll discuss about artificial intelligence, data management, and the digital world of doctoral education. We are always very happy having early career researchers present, so you are invited there, and you also find the link or after on our website. This summer we go to Finland for our UACD annual meeting. And with that, thank you very much and looking forward to our discussions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alexander. That was interesting. And there are so many things, I guess, that we could discuss because that's complicated. Yeah, how do people assess research and the role that early career researchers have in this in this assessment? Because in many cases that they don't have any role. So and it's complicated. Yeah, there are some questions. Let's see. Do you think that PhD students choose their supervisor? That's a funny, interesting question. Choose their supervisor because they have good publication metrics?
Well, as always, I would say, well, we should not generalize. So there are obviously plenty of reasons why you choose a supervisor. I would not recommend to choose the supervisor on a publication metrics, especially because the number, it doesn't mean because you have published a lot in some very important journals that you are a good supervisor. It can also be that you are not, and there are other good supervisors who may have not published so much. But at the same time, again, a one-fits-it-all approach is not necessarily the best. So if you feel this person for any reason would be a good supervisor, and there is a good also institutional support to develop the process of to work with a supervisor very well, then discuss for it openly and go for it. So it's not about you should have this kind of supervisor. It's important to have the supervisor which fits to your need and who is aware of what it means to be a supervisor.
Yeah, I agree. There's another question, say how to make sure that our published research never haunts us again during our future careers, as we can be sure at the beginning if our research is published worthy.
So if I understand right, it's about how can we
plan what we will be, let's say, proud or satisfied to be published.
Yes, I mean, this is exactly the point. You actually can never 100% plan in research. And therefore, it's also important that you don't have an assessment system which only looks at how, as I put it in the presentation, spectacular your result is. The important is that the importance, and I would say most academics would agree that, is that you do, especially as early career researchers, do a good research and that you get the support by the supervisors and the right training and the exchange with colleagues. And an assessment system should honor that. So just to give also an example, increasingly there is an understanding that even not having no results, but having a good research showing that certain questions doesn't lead there where you may want to go, it's an extremely important contribution to research. And unfortunately, it may not always get published the same way as some other results gets published, but an assessment system should not look at, again, how spectacular it is, but how you do it, and this is the important.
Yeah, and I guess also this idea of, because that happens to me in some cases, that you publish, but there is a progression, obviously, and in some cases, so research obviously advanced, and there is some changes. So you cannot sustain anymore what has been published maybe 10 years ago, because yeah, knowledge has been changing and you have been changing accordingly. So I think this is something that should be understood for early career researchers from the very beginning. So there is a progression, and it's not you publish and that's fixed. Yeah,
I think something which is just which of course is more and more discussed is this what we call the imposter syndrome. And this is important to say, of course, and I know it from myself, when you do your own research, you ask, oh no, but at the beginning you may feel, wow, I have such a great idea. And after 2 years, you realize, well, it's maybe not the greatest idea. And then before you publish it, you think, it's a still okay idea. And then you publish it. So don't put yourself under big stress by feeling, oh, is this enough? But this is not helpful, and this is a feeling a lot of researchers have all the time, even when they are retired.
Yeah, exactly. There is also an issue regarding, well, insisting something that you have already mentioned, that the most important thing is to publish articles that are relevant to science. So probably the problem is to know how to do that and where to publish. And then there are some other questions asking for that. So can you recommend a platform or practical approach for connecting with other researchers across Europe with the intention to collaborate and publish together?
Well, I don't think I'm able now to say for each discipline in its institution how you should do it. However, I would say what we see now, especially in the context of open science, they are increasing also, and this is also related to the question of peer review, new forms of outlets, new ways of publish and communicate results. However, again, here it's really also on one hand responsibility of supervisors, and we are aware that often supervisors coming from a very old system may not always, even with the best intention, may not always be aware how the situation is today. However, I would suggest here have this discussion with them, with other peers, and also with institutions. Also doctoral schools are often places where you can discuss this with professionals in these areas, with other colleagues, about how do you develop your research. But I would recommend to get into this discussion, get support, and also look what is out there, how new forms of publications come up, and not only focus, I need to have my 2 articles in these 2 journals. But again, I cannot tell you for each discipline, for each institution.
Yeah, that depends greatly on disciplines. Yeah, this is connect with another question, which I think it's something that you were already mentioning right now. What's the role of double-blinded publishing in evaluation of researchers? So can be journals forced to start double-blinded publishing? And since journals earn very much money out of publishing, what's their role in publish or perish? Have these big corporations now managing almost all the scientific journals?
Yes, so I mean, probably now a lot of journals, I would say, in most disciplines do have a more or less blind peer review blind system. So I mean, it depends again, and I know it maybe it's discipline specific. It also depends if it's a book or a journal, but especially in journal, I would say, but please correct me also, but this is quite common now, having a blind peer review process. Of course, you have limitations in all of this, and but yes, I mean, the role of publisher, I mean, this is a bit more general questions also related to open science and open access and what the role of publisher is. I cannot really tell you how the situation will be in 20 years. What is, however, important to see that the researchers community are actually increasingly also taking responsibility in this. So new, more open platforms are becoming increasingly relevant and as a form of sharing your information and your research.
Yeah, there are so many comments in the chat too. I can follow all of them. There is a question regarding some recommendations for PhD students who write a thesis through articles. Do you have any recommendation for them?
Well, again, it depends quite on disciplines if you can do it or not. I mean, there is an increasing, I would say, in certain disciplines where thesis articles are relevant or not. So I'm happy to give recommendation, but I'm not so sure what kind of recommendation. So if this is recommendable or not, but this would be again a question I feel a supervisor or other colleagues should be also a way to discuss with, or in the context of your doctoral school to be discussed.
Mm-hmm. There's another one asking about practical tips that you can give for early career researchers, like the one who was asking, EA, I don't know the name, to start affecting change in this domain.
Yes. I mean, one way to do, and there are actually, one of our key partners we have in CD is Eurodoc, which is the representation of doctoral candidates in Europe. And in many countries in Europe and outside of Europe, I'm unfortunately not so aware of it. There are also concretely associations who are representing doctoral candidates. So one thing is always to recommend, work with them, get active also in the bodies, and this is not only for open science. I mean, in the survey I mentioned before, we also looked at the role of doctoral candidates also in the governments of institutions, and they often have a role, so be active there. Second is to discuss it, to exchange about it. I mean, when I remember I did a couple of years my doctorate, I was not really aware about, it was also not so common than today, but the information it's important that everybody gets informed there and being aware of this development. So the mix of being active in association, but also spreading the word, being part of discussions like you are today, these are certainly 2 points I can recommend to do.
Yeah. And I think this also has to do, you mentioned that, but yesterday, Matthew, I think also, he was talking about the need of being part of any association of doctoral students or early career researchers, because usually they have these programs or they have initiatives, and together you have more strength to have a kind of influence in your universities or
and also another point is really to start thinking yourself is exactly what is actually doing. This is what your project is also about. So do I have only to focus on writing scientific article, or also, and another point is already reflecting what are you doing already. I know of many cases of researchers who are not even aware that what they are doing is much more than only focusing on articles. So especially when we speak also about career development, going to industry, and it's not about feeling, oh, I only did my research and I have only my 3 articles and who will give me a job for that. Doing a doctorate is much more. Everybody who does a doctorate is also a project manager, because a doctorate is always a complicated project. It's always a communicator. It's always communicating to others all the time. So and here again, you will find a doctoral education association, but also within universities, but also within trainings. A way to do it, and really think about what can you do, and don't be shy also to bring it out.
Exactly, even at the level of the doctoral program, because I don't know, Lucas in the chat is saying, well, developing a young researcher is about developing a professional identity and positioning yourself, and that's true. And there are other formats such as blogs or other formats of even scientific communication through blogs. This is a new multimodal way to publish your research. Even this research that has not been published at the journals, for example. And in the doctoral programs, usually students have also some voice and some opportunity to ask for other formats, because assessment of the candidates, when it's only based on the result, only the thesis, well, then we talk about transversal skills. We were talking about that yesterday, but if we don't include that into the assessment of PhD students at the end of their graduation, so then why we are promoting this, transversal skills or communication or dissemination your research? All the grants now include dissemination through other channels different from scientific articles. So that's a point, a real point together. Now, okay, there are some other questions. How many articles a good PhD student should publish during the 3 or 4 years of PhD program?
Yes, that's again, I mean, I cannot tell you, because it really depends on the discipline, but also I would say it depends on the person. This is also what I remember when I did my doctorate. It depends really with whom you drank a beer after a conference. So you could have a group of people and they telling you, you need to publish. That's the thing. Then you have the next day with even the same discipline, you have dinner and they say, no, just one article, this one must be really good. It's probably there is no one fits it all approach. And I mean, it depends. I mean, Lucas said exactly blogs, for instance. Now, I would not recommend if somebody feels, I don't want to do a blog, I don't feel comfortable, or I don't want to be in my thesis in 3 minutes, thing in my university because I don't like it, I feel nervous. It's maybe not worse that you do it if you don't want it or don't like it or you feel uncomfortable. But if you are interested to do it, I wouldn't personally not be afraid when people tell you, no, just focus on that. At the same time, it's also important, look what your institution can give you also support in this. You're usually not alone. You have different resources you can deal with. You have access,